Good morning. We're continue our reading of the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, from verse 21 through the end today. And yesterday, Jesus and his disciples had gone across the lake to the land of the Gadarenes, and today we find them back on the other side. It says when Jesus had crossed again in the boat, to the other side, back where he had come from, a great crowd gathered around him. And I think about that. A great crowd gathered around him. I mean, these people were looking for Jesus. They were watching for Jesus. And when someone heard where Jesus was, somehow the message got out. I mean, they didn't have cell phones to text and to tweet everybody that, hey, Jesus is over here. But somehow people found out. And maybe there were people still waiting there, hoping that Jesus would come back. But the great crowd gathered around. And it says he was by the sea, so he hadn't gotten very far yet. I mean, he had just barely gotten back on shore. And then one of the leaders of the synagogue comes, a man named Jairus. And I'm sure you know the story of Jairus. But I think it's important that one of the leaders of the synagogue. So, I mean, we talk about the scribes and the Pharisees and how often, there seems to be opposition to Jesus. And there is. I mean, anytime somebody comes with new ideas and promoting change, there is opposition, there is questioning, there is wonder, there is skepticism. But Jairus has seen enough and he has heard enough, and his daughter is near death. I mean, it says, Jairus comes and says to Jesus, please come, my daughter is near death. This is dire. And so you think about, this daughter. And at this point, we don't know that she's 12. We find that out at the end of the chapter. But this man has most likely exhausted all of the medical facilities, all of the doctors, anything that they didn't have a whole lot of miracles of modern medicine. They just didn't have that. But, he had done everything he could for his daughter, I'm sure. I mean, who wouldn't? But he comes to Jesus and says, my daughter is near death. Come and heal her. I mean, this is a statement of faith. I mean, it might be a hope, but often hope and faith kind of tie together, just like doubt and faith tie together. But hope is one of the building stones of faith. So Jairus comes and says, my little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live. This is what Mark quotes this man saying. And Jesus went with him. And it says a large crowd went along with, and they were pressed in on him so close and tight. They pressed in on him. That means they were bumping shoulders. They were, jostling about. I mean, it's sometimes when you go to a mall or a sporting event or something, you're moving around and you're bumping shoulders with people. You can't help it because it's so crowded. Well, within this crowd, Mark tells us there was a woman who had been suffering a hemorrhage for 12 years. She'd had this bleeding and this problem, this physical problem, 12 years, and she had exhausted, it says, everything she had. She spent everything. She was, again, like Jairus at the end of the rope. There were no more options. There was no more money. There was no more hope of a cure. There was no more people to talk to. But in her mind, she had heard of Jesus, and she knew. It said she knew that if she simply touched his cloak, that she would be made well. Think of that, faith. Think of the hope, just to think, if only I touched him. And we can read other places in the Gospels where it says that people were, touching the hem of his garment, and, and all of this. And so in all of this jostling about in this crowd, this woman reaches out and touches Jesus. Move my hand so you can see it, I suppose. And immediately, and here's that word immediately again. The power came out from Jesus, and she was made well, and she felt it, If I but touch his clothes, I'll be made well. Immediately, her hemorrhage stopped. She felt in her body she was healed of her disease, immediately aware the power had gone out from him. So this was, all of these other people just bumping and stuff into Jesus weren't expecting or hoping for anything, but this woman was, and Jesus felt the power go out from his body. And I think about that phrase, that, when Jesus healed somebody, when he cast out a demon, those things took physical energy. He felt the power go out from his body when this healing happened. And Jesus models for us that he goes up on the mountain to pray. He seeks these times alone for his physical rejuvenation. He needs sleep. He needs to eat just like the rest of us do for his body to get the energy. But he felt the energy go out. And he stops and he says, "Who touched me?" And his disciples say, "What do you mean? What do you mean, who touched you? Good grief, there's been people bumping into you the whole time here." And Jesus, no, this was different. And the woman, filled with fear and trembling, kneels at his feet and tells him the whole story. She doesn't just simply say, "I did," but she tells him the whole story. The whole story of 12 years of going to doctors and trying this and trying that and nothing working and spending everything she had. She tells him the whole story. That's what it says. The woman, knowing what happened to her, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. So here's Jairus wanting Jesus to get to his house to heal his daughter who is at the point of death. And Jesus stops and listens to this woman's story. I mean, Jairus should be, come on, let's go, grabbing him his hand and pulling, but no. Jesus listens. He takes time to listen to this woman's whole story. Sometimes we think that God might be too busy for us, that God's got enough to do without our problems. But Jesus models for us that he takes time to hear the whole story from this woman. And it's the same promise to you and me. He'll hear our whole story. Take time and tell the whole story. Tell the whole truth. And Jesus says to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Think about that. He calls her daughter. I mean, I've got one daughter and one son. I call them son and daughter. I've got 3 brothers and 3 sisters. I call them my brothers and sisters. I've also got some friends that I sometimes refer to as my brother or my sister. And I've got some of the friends of my sons and daughters that are kind of like sons and daughters to me. So here Jesus says to this woman, "Daughter." He includes her in the family. He doesn't say, "Woman, go." He says, "Daughter, you are a part of me. You are important to me. Daughter." And then they go, and before they even get going again on the journey, some people from Jairus' house come and say, "Don't bother the master anymore. Your daughter has died." And at that point, Jesus says to Jairus, "Have faith and believe. Trust. You came to me believing, trusting. Continue with that faith." And he went with Jairus, Peter, James, and John, and he made everybody else stay behind. How did he get them to stay? I don't know, but they did. And Jesus goes to this Jairus' house and gets there, and there are mourners. I mean, there were professional mourners, or people that would gather around for emotional support for the families, at times like this. And they said to him, "You're too late. Just go away." And Jesus said, "No, she's not dead, but she's sleeping." And they laughed at him. They laughed at him. You ever had somebody laugh at you? I mean, not with you, but at you. I mean, we all have. And it's not very comforting. It's not very fulfilling to have someone laugh at you. But Jesus didn't let that bother him because he knew. He knew who he was. He knew what power he had. And he knew what he was going to do. So he goes into the house and he takes Jairus and his wife and Peter, James, and John, and he goes to the girl's room. And he says, in the Aramaic words are in the Bible, Talitha Kum. I never studied Aramaic. I never studied Greek or any of those other fancy old languages, but I've heard many pastors over the word, say that, Talitha Kum. It means little girl, arise, little girl, get up. And she immediately, and it's another one. And immediately the girl got up and began to walk, and she was 12 years of age. And Jesus said, give her something to eat. So the healing was complete. If you're just getting over something, often you don't feel like eating something, or maybe you're going to just have some chicken noodle soup or some broth. Give her something to eat, something substantial. And I think now, I referred earlier to that this girl was 12 years old. Also, the woman had been having this hemorrhage for 12 years. I don't think this girl was sick for those 12 years. But it shows to me that no matter what has been bothering us, if we got something that's been on our minds for 12 years, 20 years, 50 years, it's never too late to come to Jesus with it. If we are young, I mean, a 12-year-old girl is a young part of her life. You know, if it's a new hurt or if it's a new something, we come to Jesus with it. Doesn't matter if it's something that was from 12 years past or if it's from 12 seconds past. We can come to Jesus with it, and he hears. And he hears. And I think those are important things to remember, that we can, you know, that like this woman, we can tell Jesus the whole truth. Tell him the whole story. Lay it on the line, you know, get it all out in the open. And he takes time to listen. I think that is so important to know that Jesus takes time to listen. And he will listen to you. He'll listen to me. And so if you have anything that's been on your mind troubling you, if you got things, you know, going on for 10, 12 years or for 10, 12 seconds, never be afraid to tell Jesus the truth, to come to God asking for help, and to have faith like this woman and this leader of the synagogue, that Jesus can take care of our problems. May God bless you today.